Hello, Renegades and Reworks. My name is TBSky, and Riot have put an informal little poll up on the Nexus website asking the player base to choose a champion update for 2020. Now, they're hedging very hard in the text of this particular article. They're very clear that this is an informal poll, and even if one champion gets like all of the votes, that doesn't mean they're going to be next. It doesn't mean they're going to be the next one immediately after Mordekaiser. Maybe we're not even going to do it if we can't figure out a nice way to do it, and all development is hard, and like all of those caveats are there. So even if one champion wins this poll completely, don't necessarily expect to see anything happening right away. Now, I'm not here to influence your vote by, for instance, telling you that you should vote for Volibear. I'm not here to tell you which one is the correct choice, even though the correct choice is Volibear. And I'm not here to tell you, like, which champion would objectively be the best one to choose, like, for instance, Volibear, and which champions kind of don't really need a visual update right now, very much like Dr. Mundo or Fiddlesticks or Nocturne or Shyvana. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not here to influence you. I'm not here to shove my opinion on you and try to get you to vote for Volibear because he's the correct choice. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to just present you with the objective information so that you yourself can make an independent decision to vote for Volibear in this poll, because he's the one you should vote for. What we're going to do, we're going to take a look at each of the champions in turn. We're going to talk about their lore, their story, their place in the League of Legends universe, and we're going to talk about some arguments in favor of or against giving them a visual update right now. How much do they need it? But to be clear, they all need it. All of them could do with it, all of them would benefit from it, but some of them, like Volibear, needs it more than others, like Shyvana. We're not going to be talking about the gameplay kit. As usual on this channel, that's not really my particular sphere of interest, because I consider the gameplay kit essentially non-canon to the lore and the story of the game. Other YouTubers, I'm sure, and other League of Legends pundits will have much more informed takes on who needs a update to their gameplay kit. So we're going to be focusing on the story and the lore and the visuals. So let's start with the first character in the article, Fiddlesticks. Now, Fiddlesticks is a really old champion. He's been around the game pretty much since the beta days, and he has never had a substantial update. Like, from a visual perspective, he's had like a texture update at one point, and they've updated his ability effects like a couple of times, but that's pretty much all that's ever been done to Fiddlesticks. The only lore change he's ever seen, really, was in the 2014 lore retcon, when the Institute of War and the League of Legends itself was retconned out of existence. Now, in the old original lore, original-ish lore for Fiddlesticks, he was a demon that some summoner summoned by accident because that summoner was stupid, and they caused a demon to appear, and that demon killed him, and then the other summoners were like, well, he kills everything that comes near him, so I guess we can use him as a champion and also an executioner sometimes. So they did that. And that was sort of, that was kind of all there really was to him. After the lore retcon, like most of the older champions, Fiddlesticks' lore just went Thanos, snap, and vanished. It just disappeared. And he, ever since, has been left kind of adrift, because he's not really associated with any region. Like, he doesn't have a connection to Noxus or Demacia or to Bilgewater or Piltover or even the Shadow Isles, which you might expect from him. He doesn't have a connection to anywhere. He doesn't really express any particular themes. He's just an evil scarecrow who stands around in wheat fields and kills people with crows. That's been why he's flown under the radar for so long, is that he's sort of like, he's so disconnected that him being bad or outdated doesn't really negatively impact much of the rest of the game. Like, it doesn't mess with the general aesthetic of a place like Noxus, or like, part of the reason why Swain's color scheme was changed when he was updated was because Noxus had changed to a red and black color scheme, and old Swain was much more, you know, green and purple and all that stuff. That was part of the reason why they made the aesthetic changes to him. Fiddlesticks doesn't really have that. Like, he doesn't mess with anything. He just stands alone in a wheat field and kills people, but he doesn't mess with anything. He doesn't interfere with anything. The only story he has, and I'm not really sure if that one is canon anymore, is one where, like, some bandits walk across his field, and then he kills them. And that's literally all there is to the story. And that's kind of why he doesn't need an update very much. This is something I talked about in my What's the Deal with Fiddlesticks video also. Fiddlesticks doesn't really need an update. He would benefit from one. Like, it would be nice to have him updated a bit, but he's a scarecrow who's like some sticks that are lashed together and then a body stuffed with straw. So his awkward, stiff animations in game make sense. Like, they express that kind of character okay, and his visual effects do what they need to do in order to get him across to the audience, and his story is completely irrelevant to pretty much everything else that happens in League of Legends. So he's been thinking, like, you can fix him up, and that'll probably be good, but there's really no need to. There's no pressing reason to, which is why I'm not gonna push my opinion on you, but I would say maybe you should consider voting for someone other than Fiddlesticks, who's more connected to the mythology of their region, who's kind of more important to some of the recent lore developments that have been happening in that region, who, might have something to say about the general themes of a whole region, rather than Fiddlesticks, who's only ever going to affect one thing, and that's himself. Moving on. Shyvana. As Riot themselves note, Shyvana's overall visual and kit quality isn't as low as some of the champions in this poll. She falls under the category of champions like Irelia or Akali, who weren't fully delivering on their thematic promise before being reworked. And Shyvana really does kind of fit in that mold. She's also an old champion who's become a bit of an awkward fit in the modern state of League of Legends. Now, if you remember, Shyvana is a Demacian, and she is in fact Prince Jarvan's right-hand woman, or one of his closest advisors anyway. Now, Jarvan and Shyvana meet out in the sticks, like out in the countryside of Demacia, where Jarvan helps Shyvana kill her dragon mom, who's evil and who's doing evil stuff, and Shyvana, for her part, is much more loyal to the memory of her father, and is trying to find a place for herself in the world as a half-human, half-dragon. And so she's living this dangerous life of being, like, right underneath the noses of the Demacian mage seekers who hate magic, who want to eradicate all magical creatures. She's just there hanging out with Jarvan IV, the Crown Prince. And so that's sort of, it's a little bit of a Lux story with her as well. Like, Lux's story is all about hiding her magical nature from the Demacian surroundings around her and how that affects her relationship with her family, whereas Shyvana is more of a fitting into a society that doesn't fully accept her kind of thing, where she kind of wants to help Jarvan change attitudes around magic and magical creatures in Demacia and change things for the better. And she's sort of dedicated her life to serving him and his honorable ideals and stuff like that. And for that, Shyvana's design doesn't really work, because theoretically, based on that description, she should be someone who spends most of her time walking around looking completely normal, like a normal human in like a Demacian uniform or whatever, like some Demacian armor, looking like a relatively ordinary soldier who does ordinary human stuff, and then she transforms into the big raging dragon as an expression of the, disconnect between the two sides of her nature that are at war with themselves. Shyvana right now does not look, she looks like she's a dragon person. Like, no one could possibly look at that and go, oh, yes, that is definitely a normal human, that nothing magical is happening with her at all. She's a perfectly ordinary human person who has purple scaly skin and glowing eyes and fire hands. No, I would never. So there's a good reason thematically in terms of her lore and her place in the story of League of Legends to change Shyvana, so to make her make more sense within the modern state of Demacia, which currently she just doesn't at all. From a visual perspective, Shyvana's design is also a little bit, she's more in the vein of like those really high fantasy anime concept characters than anything else. Like, she's a character who you'd see in like an anime mobile gacha game or something like that, where the costume is more about expressing, oh yeah, it's just like red and gold and dragon and fire, yeah, but it's not really about communicating a coherent character to her. Like, why is she wearing the giant helmet with horns on? Because it looks dragon-ish, I guess. Why does her armor have all the spikes and all the gold and all the red? It's fire and gold and dragons. Like, there's no really serious thematic cohesion in her character. Like, why is she wearing this weird, I don't know, with bikini bottom made of metal with spikes that gives her a thigh gap, but why is that there? Oh, because it looks sexy and cool, and like, it's fine. Like, much like Fiddlesticks, it's a design where like it's fine the way it is, kinda, but it's just not very well thought through. It's not really up to date with a modern League of Legends aesthetic, and that's where I can definitely see that there's a good argument for giving Shyvana an update, because it would make her fit into the Demacian thematic much more strongly. It would make her, be a much more interesting part of that region in League of Legends lore, and it would do a lot more to express her personal story. But on the other hand, she's also one of those characters who looks fine in game. Like, you never look at Shyvana running around in a League of Legends game and go, oh wow, she looks so out of place. She looks like she's an old, ugly, terrible model from a game that's 10 years old, even though, like, she is a pretty old model. So she's one of those things where it's like, there's not a pressing, overwhelming need to do anything with her, but certainly there is some good arguments for why it might be worth reworking her. Moving on to Nocturne. As Riot points out, Nocturne is an interesting case. He's one of the most popular champions among players just starting out, but most of those players quit playing him shortly after trying him out. This suggests that Nocturne's gameplay and visual fantasies are strong, but he's not quite delivering on them in-game. Nocturne. Nocturne, in the lore of the video game, and he's always been this, is a nightmare demon. He's a demon of fear, essentially, who hides in people's minds and exploits their worst paranoias and turns their fantasies against them. He's essentially Freddy Krueger, like, essentially that kind of thing. He invades your dreams, he turns them against you, he makes you convulse with terror, and then he kills you. That's not what he looks like at all. Like, nothing about Nocturne's character design suggests anything like that at all, because what Nocturne is in the game is a ghost with spike arms who kills you not by terrifying you until you die, but by literally just cutting you in half with his swords. So there's a massive disconnect between what Nocturne is supposed to occupy in the lore, where he's supposed to be this shapeless, nameless horror that kind of lurks at the edge of your perception and makes you paranoid and terrifies you until you go insane, and then you curl into a fetal ball and eventually die from your heart just giving out from the adrenaline that's pumping through it. That's his lore. In-game, it's like, blah, I killed you! And then he punches you in the face with a sword and then you're dead. And those two things don't fit together at all. So there's a very strong thematic argument for reworking Nocturne, for making his aesthetic and his visuals, and indeed his gameplay kit, which is not at all about scaring enemies in the way that it's supposed to be. There's a very strong argument for making those changes. The argument against it is that, much like Fiddlesticks, Nocturne doesn't really affect anything else. Like, he has no affiliation to any of the major storylines in the game. He has no affiliation to any particular regions. Like, he's had, like, one clash with Lux and Garen in one of the lore stories that they put out for this game, where he was mostly, like, a secondary antagonist. He wasn't really the important part of the story. He's not... I've been talking a lot today. He's not really interesting from a personality perspective, because there's not a lot to him. Like, he just scares you with whatever you're afraid of, and he does that because he's a fear demon. And it's not... So he's one of those champions where you could get a much more compelling character design, and a much more compelling visualization and execution of his lore concept, and make him much more thematically distinct, because right now he looks like Murder Ghost number 15 from literally any horror video game, or literally any fantasy video. He could be in Warcraft 3 or 4 as a murder. You could encounter him in World of Warcraft as an enemy. He's very generic, but doesn't really have any kind of unique expression to himself, where an updated Nocturne could do a hell of a lot to improve. Like, to improve in that sense, to make him more unique and make him more focused around his core thematic. So, I can see arguments in both directions, but like Fiddlesticks, he doesn't affect anything else. Like, there's not, for the health of the whole of the League of Legends game, for the whole of the League of Legends lore, there isn't really a compelling argument to vote for him, because he's like, oh, you got a better Nocturne, that says absolutely nothing about anything else that happens anywhere in League of Legends. Yay, I guess. Moving on to Dr. Mundo, another one of the very old champions who's managed to stay mostly unchanged in League of Legends. And like Fiddlesticks, it's kind of for a similar reason. Now, Mundo is actually an interesting expression of the thematics of Sawn, in the sense that Sawn is all about this unregulated, sort of chemical-bathed underclass world where people are literally poisoned or turned into monsters by the exploits of the Piltoverians. Piltovians? They're being exploited by Piltover, and it sucks, and it's this kind of chempunk, sort of steampunky, underground, post-industrial world, like this just kind of ugly and full of burning. And Mundo is kind of a perfect expression of that. He's a combination of Frankenstein's monster and a mutated Hulk that's a reflection of the environment that he exists within. But then he's also a sadomasochist-ish, or mostly a masochist more than a sadist, really, but where that whole theme, which is, like, overtly sexual, doesn't really play, like, it doesn't really come to expression in him. What's the whole thing about being a masochist? Like, why does he enjoy pain? Like, on a surface level, that's an expression of the idea that he's corrupted. Like, he's a Bizarro person. He enjoys pain rather than enjoying pleasure. Much like Bizarro in Superman. He does the opposite of what the sensible thing is. But it's also confused because, okay, so he's a sadomasochist transformed monster, but then he's also running around with a giant butcher cleaver, but he's also a weird Bruce Banner, the Hulk super scientist monster. There's a lot of confusion with Mundo about what the heck is supposed to be going on with that guy. And that's a pretty compelling argument for giving him a full VGU, like a full update, is to streamline him a bit to make him more... Like, first of all, make him fall in line with modern-day Noxian aesthetics more, Sawnite aesthetics more, because he looks like old Sawn, when old Sawn was all about science monsters and chemicals and poison and stuff. He doesn't so much look like new Sawn, which is more of a sort of post-industrial, sort of run-down, destroyed, polluted hell place. And so... There's a lot of thematic disconnect there. In terms of his lore, by the way, Mundo is yet another one of those characters who doesn't really have any. Because all I remember of his lore currently, and I've read it multiple times, but it's not memorable, so it's hard to remember, is that, oh, he was a weird person who transformed with science, and now he's this. And he has one story where he runs into Echo. He has a fight with Echo, and we kind of get an insight into his mind space, like how his brain is configured, where we get to see his sort of weirdo, bizarro logic where he thinks he's helping people by hurting them, where he's really just kind of a ripoff of Bizarro from Superman, really. And so Mundo is one of those characters who could desperately use an update, and whose update would actually be quite good for the region of Sawn as a whole, because he could be a powerful thematic force in that world, and it would make him fall more in line with the modern League of Legends aesthetic. There's a lot of good reasons to update Mundo. The only good reason not to update him is that Volibear needs it more. So let's move on to Volibear. Now, Volibear is another one of those messy champions in League of Legends. In terms of his lore, currently... he's supposed to be a demigod of the Freljord, like on the same scale of power as your Anivias and your Orns. He's one of the creatures who is associated with the creation myths of the Freljord. He made the rivers by peeing them, if I remember correctly, which is a very Norse mythology kind of thing to do. And that's an interesting concept for him, but the trouble is, no, that's not really what he looks like he is, because he's not designed to be that. What he's designed to be is a tribal leader in the Freljord. That's his old lore, is that he was like a member of the Bear tribe who was worried that the Bear tribe was gonna die. So he went to the top of a mountain, and then he got hit by lightning, and then he got lightning superpowers, so now he's the leader of the Bear tribe, and he's fighting for their future. Traditionally, he's been allied with Sejuani in the, Freljord trinity of power, Sejuani, Lysandra, and Ashe. But always just as, yet another tribal leader, never as a god creature. And that's reflected in the current state of his universe page, which has both his old lore state where he's a tribal leader, but then it also has the part that says that he's a weird eldritch demigod who's always existed. And then there's the trouble of one of the most recent lore additions to the Freljord. What's it called? Silence for the Damned, which is a story about Volibear, Sejuani, and Udyr. And in that story... Volibear is a very different beast. He's a very different thing. In that story, Volibear and his tribe are described not just as tribes members, not just as a demigod of the Freljord. Volibear is an eldritch Lovecraftian horror. Like, he's this ancient, blood-soaked, terrifying lightning god that consumes the minds of other creatures just by being such a powerful presence, and who transforms his followers into horrifying bear mutants, and who eats the dead of war in order to give himself, a larger body. In one point in the story, he's described as having 12 spider-like eyes sitting in the front of his forehead. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty freaking badass to me. That sounds pretty freaking cool to me. Volibear is not as thematically inconsistent as your Dr. Mundos or your Nocturnes. Volibear isn't really as ugly as many of the other champions that are on this list, but if what they're teasing in Silence for the Damned is anything close to the concept that they have in mind for this guy, you need to vote for him, right? Because I want the Lovecraftian eldritch spider bear horror from beyond the void. That's sort of this crackling monstrosity infused with lightning that thunders across the battlefield and dominates the minds of those that surround him. I want that in the game, because that is something that will be truly unique in League of Legends. That's something that League of Legends doesn't already have. That's something that it could really use. That's something that would lend a different kind of horror to the Freljord region. It would do a lot to expand exactly the nature of the demigods in the Freljord, because we have these visions of Anivia and Ornn as these essentially personable human-ish gods that have these human-ish personalities where you can kind of you can understand them, you can travel alongside them, they're sort of vaguely harmless, where Volibear represents something that is truly terrifying, and which is profoundly dangerous and which is injurious to the human mind in a way that nothing else really has been in League of Legends. Also, it would be nice to have a character who expresses that particular horror theme, like this horror that human minds are not meant to comprehend, who isn't from the goddamn void. That would be nice to have this eldritch, pagan, unknowable god from a savage culture that you don't understand, whose, eldritch magic seeps into your brain and confuses, like that to me is a very compelling, cool concept. That to me is the thing I want to see. Everything else, like Dr. Mundo updated, yeah, I guess that'd be nice. Cool. Son would be a little bit better with him around. Nocturne updated, yeah, it would be nice to have a cool Fear Demon, but we kind of already have Fear Demon, like we already have a good Evelyn and Tom Kent, like, do we really? And Shyvana is like, yeah, that would be cool, but it wouldn't be new or that interesting. It would just be a better version of what we already have. And with Fiddlesticks is like, he's fine, though. But Volibear, eldritch bear god horror from the high north, frozen terror of the wastes, with his tribe of barbarian mutants running along behind him, tearing apart everything they find on the battlefields, dominating the minds of others, setting up for a future confrontation, not only with Udyr, but with Shyvana as well, for the future of the Freljord. That to me sounds badass as hell. They have done a lot of work in the Freljord to set up this guy, to set up that confrontation, to set up what Volibear could be to the new state of the Freljord. I want to see that. So I don't want to push my opinion on you or anything. I don't want to sit here just like trying to change your mind, but Volibear is objectively the best choice, and if you don't choose him, then you are a coward. No, of course, choose whoever you would like in the poll on the website, and I would encourage you to choose Volibear, but whoever you think needs the update more, go ahead and pick them. And once that update comes out, of course, we'll be taking an extended look at that in a What's the Deal video. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this video, this little fun discussion of why Volibear is objectively the right choice and all the other choices aren't good. I really can't help myself. And if you have, then like, comment, subscribe, YouTube button, whatever. YouTube wants you to click stuff, so please do it, because that's what keeps channels alive on this godforsaken hell platform. If you want to support the channel more directly, then there is Patreon, where you can sign up for like $1 a month if you want to do that. If you don't want to sign up for a subscription, though, then there's also tip jars in my description down below, where you can send me like a one-time tip and say, hey, good job not pushing your opinion that Volibear is the best choice on us in an unduly manipulative way. That was very nice of you to never attempt to push your audience into doing something that you want. And as I say at the end of my videos, if you have a content creator whose work you like, then even $1 can mean the same as thousands of page views or thousands of views on a YouTube video. It makes a tremendously bigger difference than you think, even the very small donations. And in fact, a lot of the time, a lot of small donations is better than single large donations for us, because that's more reliable generally, and it's nice to feel more connected to the audience like that. So even though small donations like $1, like little tips like that, can feel like not a lot, I promise you, if you have a YouTuber, whether it's me or someone else, or an online content creator whose work you like, those small donations can make a world of difference for us. It literally can mean the difference between eating ramen for dinner and eating actual food. So if you want to do that, I would be very grateful. If not, don't worry about it. It's enough that you have watched the video this far. Good lord, this thing is almost 25 minutes long already. If you haven't enjoyed this video, of course, there's a dislike button right down below, which you can click now, if you want to, but, you know, there's an update coming. Like, I've seen some rumors that there's an update coming for the dislike, but they're gonna change the whole, they're gonna overhaul the whole thing. It's gotta get a new look, it's gonna get, like, new abilities and visuals, and it's gonna get a new story and voiceover lines and stuff like that. So if you want to click the dislike button, maybe consider holding off until the update is out, where then you can really get the pleasure out of the full click, where the new effects and all the new lore and the story that's going on there. But if you click it now, you're just gonna get the same old thing, and like, is that even worth it? Is that even worth clicking the dislike button for? I don't think. You should just come back like in a year and a half when the dislike button rework might be out, maybe. And if it's not out by then, just wait. Just keep waiting forever. Thank you very much for watching.